And we're back. Hello, students. It's good to be with you. This is your favorite teacher, Mr. Jacobson. And we've talked a lot about Greece thus far. We've talked about the geography. We've talked about the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, some of the early civilizations. And we talked about the Greek literature and the gods and why they came up with the ideas of gods and goddesses and heroes. So now we're going to transition to Sparta and Athens, which are probably the most popular of the polis or the police that we have discussed and we will be discussing. And we're going to go into the timeline of Greek leadership right away, so you can understand how it all began. So, like most civilization, Greece actually had a king at one point, as you can see. So it started off as a monarchy, and most civilizations do. And then it transitions to what we call an oligarchy. An oligarchy is this idea that a few people hold the power in the society. So it's not just limited to one person like a king would be. And third is tyrants. Now tyrants are people who take power by force. So tyrants usually don't last super long because the people hate them, they don't accept them. But if they have a heavy enough hand, they can stay in power for a very long time. And fourth, all citizens share and run the government. Yes, that is democracy. So that is kind of the progression of the Greek governments and the leadership that accompanied it. So let us begin. So we have here at the transition to tyrants. So at the end of the Dark Age, a select few ran the affairs of the government. Remember, we call that an oligarchy. This left out and angered most of the people, like farmers, merchants, artisans, etc. They want to be a part of it. They don't like it that these select few people get to tell them what to do and control their livelihood and affect their lives in such a way. So the people began to rebel. However, when you rebel, you open up turmoil in the country, and it's possible that a tyrant could come in and take and seize power. And that's exactly what happened. It happened in Athens. It's happened in Sparta. It happened in many places. So tyrants became very popular when turmoil and unrest was throughout Greece or city-state. So let's talk about Sparta. So Spartan military culture in the early times of Sparta, the actual Spartans were the minority. They had so many slaves that eventually they rebelled, and the Spartans almost lost their civilization. As a result, Spartans prized military power because it was the only thing that saved them from the slaves, and they called slaves helots. So you have a picture here that I found on the internet I thought was pretty informational. We have the helots were state-owned slaves. Were treated very harshly. They largely outnumbered the Spartans. Look at that, 20 to 1. Spartans worried that the helots would revolt because they did before, and so the Spartans kept this strong military kind of prowess to their government, and that became part of their culture. So Spartan society was dominated by the military. The founder of Spartan military society was Lycurgus, and the Spartans believed that the military power was the only way to ensure safety and protection to the city-state. It had to be strong. If you weren't strong, you were weak, and if you were weak, you deserved to get taken over. That's what the Spartans believed because it almost happened to them by a helot revolt. Spartan boys, babies that were unhealthy, were taken outside the city and left to die. Healthy boys were trained from an early age to be soldiers. To make the boys tough, they were not given shoes, wore light clothes during the winter, and were not given a lot of food. Courage and strength were more important than their own safety. So the boys were they were treated like grown-ups really, and they were expected to act accordingly. And I mean, for some kids, if a kid was constantly crying, they'd beat the kid until receiving beatings was just so normal, a normal part of life. It was like, it was eating or, sneezing. It was just, well, yeah, I get beat. That's what I'm supposed to get. So they would do this to toughen these kids because they expected their soldiers to be the top of the line in discipline and in temperance. So from 20 to 30 years of age, men lived in army barracks and rarely visited their families. Men stayed in army until 60 years old. Most important qualities in a soldier were self-discipline and obedience. They didn't have comforts because they were thought it made you weak. Now I want to qualify this here. So from 20 to 30, they were in active military service. At 30, they could come home, have a family, etc. However, they were always on call, meaning that they were, if war broke out and they needed every man they could get, then from 30 to 60, they were in the reserves. So they did stay home. They did kind of have a livelihood at that point. They did raise families. But if the call came, if you were 59 years old and they needed you to fight, you fought. Spartan girls received physical training like running, jumping, swimming, javelin throwing. They believed this exercise made them strong for bearing children. So they also encouraged Spartan women to be strong, to be athletic, because they believed that if they did this, then that would encourage them to bear strong sons um, and daughters that would continue the legacy of this, this super warrior mentality that Spartan was trying to produce. Spartan women had more rights than other Greek city-states because the men were away at war a lot. So if the man is constantly away at war, someone's got to conduct the affairs of their household and their families. Some women owned land and ran their household when their husbands were away. They did not spend time weaving or making clothes because the slaves did that. And so life as a Spartan woman was very different than life as an Athenian woman. Spartan government. Spartan government was an oligarchy. We already discussed that. Two kings headed a council of 28 elders over the age of 60. So you have two kings, and they were in charge of a council of 28 elders. Each person of 28 elders had to be over 60 years old, so they could not fight in the military. Plus 60 meant that they had long service in military, and they were probably good strategists, and they were also just had a lot of wisdom being that old, so they valued that. They voted on laws and chose 5 people to be the ephors for each year. An ephor managed laws and collected taxes. Spartan laws. To discourage people from questioning the government, they didn't want you to question the government. They did not allow foreign visitors. No one was able to come into Spartan society. It was, I shouldn't say nobody, but it was not, it was discouraged and they were not welcome. So it was really hard to come into Spartan society and to even visit. They didn't allow people to travel abroad unless there was a military reason or campaign, and they frowned upon citizens studying art and literature. So, as you can see, the Spartan society, it wasn't exactly a free one. I wouldn't call it free. It wasn't like Athens where you were able to vote and to debate. Remember, it's an oligarchy, so this is not a democracy. Nevertheless, they were a very powerful culture, and they were a big means for defending Greece from the Persian Empire. Let's go to Athens. Athens admired the mind. Spartans' main rival in Greece was Athens. Like Sparta, Athens was a leader in the Persian wars and had a powerful army. Life in Athens was different from Sparta. Athenians valued physical training, education, clear thinking, and the arts. So you can kind of think of the Spartans as kind of like to the extreme, probably not very balanced. However, in our society, we would try to be more like Athenians in that we would want to have, be physically fit, be intelligent, be educated, be able to also be creative. So Athenians would fit more of the prime, the stereotype of what today we're trying to have children be like in America. Boys in Athens from rich families improved both their bodies and mind. They learned to run, jump, and fight. They also learned to read, write, count, sing, and play an instrument. They also studied both Greek literature, taught by a private tutor. Poor boys became farmers and craftspeople. So really the only people in Athens that the boys that were able to kind of go into education were the wealthy families. If you were from a poor family, you became a farmer or you became an expert in a craft, usually the craft that your father probably taught. So here we have on a vase here we have a writing of an Athenian lad here, and as you can see he has a stylus and he's writing and he's learning the basics of education. Men in Athens, all men joined the army. So just like Sparta, every man was required to join the army in Athens. Men only devoted 2 years to be in the army as opposed to 10 years for Sparta. They helped defend the city from 18 to 20. Older men had to serve in the army in times of war. So, just like Sparta as well, if it was times of war, then they recruited more people to come and defend. Girls in Athens, girls received almost no education. Most girls only learned household chores like weaving and sewing. Rich girls had private tutors for education. Women in Athens. Women could not, here we go, serve as a government official, leave their homes except on special occasions, buy anything or own property, disobey their husbands or fathers. So as you can see, things were they're kind of, they're strict, very strict. Around 600 BC, many farmers complained about noble mistreatment. A noble named Solon. So we have, well, let me just recap here. So those farmers are starting to complain that the nobles are mistreating them. Um, the nobles have the farmers in severe debt, and when you're once in debt to somebody, they own you. So these farmers, although they're free people, they're not slaves, but they're in such debt from these nobles that they pretty much are owned anyway, because they're a slave to debt, and their debtor is the are the nobles. So they start complaining, and Solon, he kind of rises to power. He's a noble himself, but he cancels all the farmers' debts owed by the nobles. And then he freed the farmers that became slaves, because if a farmer can't pay their debt, then the nobles would typically just sell them into slavery and pocket that money. So Solon did away with all the debts. He thought it was outrageous. The debts that were owed were just so high, and they'll never be able to pay them back. So he just forgave them all. And then he also freed the farmers from slavery that were sold into slavery because they couldn't pay such debts. He allowed all male citizens to participate in assembly and law courts. After Solon died, Athens was in turmoil and became controlled by a tyrant by the name of Pisistratus. 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 Well, anyway, it's a Greek name. So Pisistratus is a tyrant for about 30 years, but then eventually he is overthrown and things kind of get a little normal again. Uh, Cleisthenes Cleisthenes, I know how to say this name. I'm sorry. Cleisthenes. Thank you. Boy, you gotta have to really think sometimes with some of these Greek names. His name is Cleisthenes, and he reorganized the assembly that Solon instituted when he was in power, and he allowed male citizens to participate. Now, males could also openly debate political issues. So in Solon time, they couldn't debate the issues out openly. However, Cleisthenes, he did allow them to do that. He also created a council of 500 citizens to assist the assembly with laws, foreign countries like the how to deal with foreign countries, and oversaw the treasury. Now, council members were chosen each year by lottery. So the Council of 500 was chosen by a lottery of citizens. Now, the reason why it was chosen in that they drew names to see who was going to be in this council. This was considered fairer than an election, which might favor the rich. So people were concerned because, look, if this person's rich, then he can, you know, if you're rich and you're doing an election, then you can advertise more, you have more influence, people kind of look more at you because you're rich and wealthy. And so Cleisthenes wanted to discourage this, and so he decided, you know what, I'm going to have a lottery instead of a election to see who's on the council. And people who were not a part of Athenian democracy were non-citizens, women, slaves, foreign-born men who were all excluded from the political process. Cleisthenes is considered accredited to be the father of Athens, and um, as far as the democracy goes, he's the one that brought it to them. And that's pretty much it. So hope you enjoy this. Hope you learned a lot. Go ahead and make that summary. I'll see you at the first of the week. Thanks.